Hello, and welcome into Candlestick Chronicles, a 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Kyle Madson. I write about the 49ers over at NinersWire.com, part of the USA Today sports media group. Chris Biderman with me, as always, and we're going to talk about the 49ers tight ends today as we continue our journey through the 49ers roster, leading you into training camp. We will do a position group, 2 position groups per week-ish, leading you right up to camp, and then we'll dive into the camp festivities. But before we do that, before we get our Jake Tonjes takes out, we got to talk about our friends over at Lamb Chops. Chris, I imagine you're wearing Lamb Chop shorts as we speak.
Yeah, you better believe it.
Yeah,
I'm in my podcasting uniform, which usually includes a pair of Lamb Chops shorts, either sweat shorts or mesh shorts variety. It's 110 degrees outside right now. As we record this on Wednesday, June 3rd in Sacramento. It's about 5:30, so about as hot as it's going to get maybe all year. Actually, no, I'm looking at the forecast. It says 112 Friday and Saturday. Will not be in Sacramento those days, ideally.
Come cool off in Oakley where it's only 105.
Well, when I will, no matter what I do, Kyle, I will be wearing my mesh Lamb Chops shorts. Just got a couple of new pairs in the mail. My better half got a pair. She loves them. And how can you not? They're stylish. They're comfortable. The quality is really good. Had multiple pairs for multiple years now, and there's been no sort of no fraying, no fading, none of that stuff happening. Just high quality clothing. The designs are, of course, great. And yeah, we love we love all of our Lamb Chops clothing. Like I said, it's my life uniform, my podcasting uniform. So we appreciate Craig and everyone else at Lamb Chops for supporting the podcast.
Hell yeah. We'll even appreciate Kyle Anderson, former Minnesota Timberwolf, now Golden State Warrior. We're also sponsored by Prize Picks. Shout out to Prize Picks. We're having a ton of fun doing daily fantasy sports. And just because football season ends, I know we do our segments during the season where we do our picks with various, typically the 49ers game that week. But that doesn't mean Prize Picks stops when football season stops. No, they had NBA that obviously is now over. They had NHL, which is now over. But again, still doesn't stop because we got WNBA. We've got MLB. We've got cricket. We've got esports are on there. We got golf, tennis, whatever you. I think there's like darts. You can do some darts daily fantasy. Like why not? It's it not only enhances your sports watching experience, but it also enhances your sports following experience because I don't know where to find darts, but I like going and finding out if my entry was correct. So play along at prizepicks.com/candlestick, promo code candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. Kyle, what's this Prize Picks? Great question. It's daily fantasy sports. It's the easiest way to do it. You go to prizepicks.com/candlestick, you sign up, you pick 2 to 6 players, you pick more or less on their stat projections, and then if you got the skills, you'll pile up the W's. I've been having some success in the WNBA. I've been having some success with MLB. Not a great dartsman just yet, but we're researching, we're studying, we're grinding, trying to get my skills up. So my daily fantasy darts action is improved. So go to prizepicks.com/candlestick, promo code candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/candlestick, promo code candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. That is Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, let's talk about the 49ers tight ends. What an interesting group. An interesting group the 49ers tight ends are.
Is it?
Kinda.
Make the case.
Okay. It's interesting from this standpoint. And this is a little bit what we'll get to again. If you're not familiar with how we're doing these position previews, make sure to check out our preview of the trenches, offensive line and defensive line. But we're taking a look at the biggest question, the breakout candidate, position battles, and then a group grade is how we're doing these previews. And I think as you go through the tight end room, there's not like, don't get this twisted. It's not like they are on the brink of having a couple of Hall of Famers in their room at the same time. It's not that. And it's not that it's a slam dunk that anybody outside of George Kittle is going to be particularly impactful. But I think it's interesting because of one player in particular who we'll talk about, Logan Thomas. And B, It's the first time in 4 years that it's anybody aside from Ross Dwelly and Charlie Werner behind George Kittle. And so, if nothing else, there's just a one entire ass load of question marks on the depth chart behind Kittle going into camp. And so, when we're watching the tight ends in camp, it's really genuinely, I think, George Kittle and then wide open. And it hasn't been that really for any of the last 4 years.
Yeah, I think one of the, it's kind of a common talking point leading into the draft. Basically every spring, like a yearly tradition. Will the 49ers get a tight end to complement George Kittle and potentially replace him? Last year they used a 3rd-round pick on Cam Latu, 7th-round pick on Braden Willis. Cam Latu missed the entire season with an injury after looking shaky, and I think shaky is probably the best way to say it, in preseason and training camp. Braden Willis played very sparingly. I think his most notable play was the fact that he was a target of a pass late in the Super Bowl that didn't go great, right? So, yeah, I mean, since the 49ers added Jordan Reed in 2020, they really haven't made a substantial investment, or at least added somebody proven. It wasn't a substantial investment, but a proven veteran, somebody who has history in the league of being a productive player, behind George Kittle. And I think they would argue, like, we have a lot of expensive players. We're paying George Kittle one of the highest salaries in the league for the position, and he often plays 90+% of the snaps. So we don't really need to invest heavily in that position. But now Kittle's, he's north of 30. He's been in the league for a while, a lot of wear and tear, physical style of play, tons of injuries that he's just sort of the minor nagging injuries that he's played with throughout his career. Whenever his career is over, he's more likely than not gonna need surgery to fix his shoulder, right? So, it'll be interesting to see, maybe next offseason if they actually do make a substantial investment in tight end. But for now, Logan Thomas is really the most notable name they've brought in since Jordan Reed, and Jordan Reed was far from a sure thing just given his injury history, and that bore out too, right? So yeah, it's kind of like George Kittle and the Also Rans. It's like, are they going to get
good band name?
It's just going to be George Kittle and maybe a blocker. And, like we saw Ross Dwelly catch some passes a few years ago, but kind of fell out of favor, mostly because the Niners didn't need him because their second tight end was going to be a blocker and not, a move tight end, a pass catcher. So, yeah, I think I'm less intrigued with the overall composition of the group than you might be.
Well, you're just not a football guy the way I am. It makes sense.
I mean, the thing is like, as what they've done typically is just relied so heavily on George Kittle to where they needed him to stay healthy. And if they didn't, there would be a massive drop off. At least this offseason with Logan Thomas, it's okay. We have a guy who's played at a reasonable level in the league before. If George Kittle has to miss a game or two, it's not going to be the end of the world. So I think that's probably the difference going into this season as opposed to others when it was George Kittle and, mostly question marks.
Yeah, and I think this ties sort of to this is more than a tight end room question, but since we're here, we'll bring it up, and this will get brought up again, either before or during camp. But it has felt like for a while, the zag that Kyle Shanahan has been trying to make is like multiple tight end sets. We saw them add Jordan Reed, who is a tight end, but ostensibly a wide receiver. We saw them go after, I believe it was Mike Silver reported a few off seasons ago, they tried to go sign Austin Hooper when Austin Hooper was still a thing, and catching passes semi-prolifically. And I think that they hoped there would be more pass catching upside with Charlie Werner than there wound up being. But the fact they went and got Logan Thomas, maybe it's because of what you're talking about. Maybe it is they looked at the wear and tear on George Kittle by the end of last season and went, yo, we need to get this guy off the field sometimes. Love what he does as a block. Obviously he's still an incredible player, and I was expecting a pretty significant fall off from him by this point, and the fact that he was still 1,000-yard receiver is super impressive. And still dominant as ever as a blocker. But I think if you're the Niners and you're looking at him making deep playoff runs year after year, you're going, man, we need to spell this guy at some point. We need to have some viable option that we can put on the field and affect how defenses want to cover. Maybe it's just that. But I also feel like this is something that Kyle Shanahan has been leaning toward as defenses are getting smaller and more defensive back heavy. He is going to now zag back toward, bigger offenses, multiple tight end sets, 2 tight ends, 2 running backs with, those 2 tight ends are both capable of going up and lining out wide and catching passes, so defenses have to respect that. Kyle Juszczyk can line up wherever. You have to respect that. Same thing with Christian McCaffrey. And so they can just line up and beat the hell out of you. Or if you want to get bigger, they have the flexibility to turn their 22 personnel into basically like 11 personnel if they want, or 5 wide, or however they want it to look. I just think there's a lot of variability and flexibility that would give him as a play caller. And given the Austin Hooper thing, given the Jordan Reed thing, and now the Logan Thomas thing, maybe it's they want to spell George Kittle, but I think this is something they've been trying to get to for the last few years. And Logan Thomas was kind of the player available who could give them that this season.
Yeah,
maybe
I think wrong. I think ostensibly I think that second tight end has more or less just been Kyle Juszczyk for the most part.
Right.
Like and he's getting paid as such. He's basically, there was a whole lot of hand wringing for years about Kyle Juszczyk and making $5 million a year, and it was
hand wringing from one person.
Well, I think beyond one person. I think it was, when Kyle Juszczyk's contract numbers came out, it was a pretty regular conversation. Like, wow, the 49ers are crazy for paying Kyle Juszczyk. And it's like, no, they're basically paying him what a good backup tight end makes. And He plays more than a good backup tight end. And he's proven to be worth the contract. Like, there's been no buyer's remorse from the 49ers, or I think anybody who watches the team regularly that says, oh, they're clearly worse off for having paid Kyle Juszczyk.
Sure.
But the point here beyond that is just Kyle Juszczyk is ostensibly the Niners' second tight end.
Right. Like, no, I understand that, but they're not lining him up in line as a like big second tight end. He's an H-back.
Sure.
More than anything.
Sure. He's an H-back. He lines up. He can line up split wide. He can line up, off the line of scrimmage where a tight end or an H-back would line up. He could line up in the backfield, obviously. He can catch passes out of the slot. That versatility, because I asked Kyle Shanahan this years ago. It was at I think it was a 2019 owners meetings. One of those meetings where the NFL has its big owners meeting party the night before. And then for whatever reason has the coaches and GMs talk at like 7:30 in the morning. Just insane. To the media. And I asked Kyle Shanahan, because I think Kyle Juszczyk was getting a new contract, or I forget exactly what it was. But it was basically about the value of a tight end. And Shanahan gave like a really long football nerd answer talking about, and I know we're talking about tight ends here, but my point here is that the fullback acts as a second tight end. But what Kyle Juszczyk does is allows the offense to dictate things to the defense rather than the other way around, right? Like Kyle Juszczyk is versatile enough as a pass catcher and a run blocker that he can be somebody who lines up anywhere and you can find a mismatch anywhere on the field in the running game and or the passing game, right? So that to me has always been part of Kyle Shanahan's ethos, has been the reliance on a versatile fullback, not just any fullback. Like, it's not like Lorenzo Neal's back there and he's just, like ramming into linebackers and those types of things. Like, Kyle Juszczyk has that in his game, sure, but it's about versatility with the fullback position. And part of that versatility is being a de facto second tight end. So I agree with you that the 49ers love big personnel, but I think a majority of that has to do with Kyle Juszczyk because he's probably more versatile than most second tight ends would be.
Yes, I don't disagree with anything you said. So let me clarify. I don't think the 49ers are going to start. So 21 personnel, 2 running backs, 1 tight end is the Niners like bread and butter. I don't think that's going to stop. I think what they're going to do is sometimes on like 3rd and short or 2nd and short or 4th and 1 or down near the goal line, when they go heavy personnel with multiple tight ends, it gives them way more options where, okay, yeah, it's Christian McCaffrey. Kyle Juszczyk still on the field, but the second tight end is now Logan Thomas instead of Charlie Werner. And defenses have to go, oh shit, like we have to cover Logan Thomas. You'd have to do that with Charlie Werner. You could just, your defensive end is running with him. Or whoever
Charlie
you want to run
Warner
with him.
Had 11 targets in 4 seasons.
I have a stat coming up on production here. But okay. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be like they're running 22 personnel 70% of the time or anything insane like that. It's just not really been an option for them because like variance, what's the word I'm looking for? Not variance, like deception is a big piece of what Kyle Shanahan does offensively. Like he's going to run this play. It's going to be a run. It's going to be a run. He's going to give this run look. Oh, nope. Now it's a pass. And that's what the positionless football thing is. I think having a capable pass catching second tight end adds the 22 personnel bag or the 22 personnel group to his bag in a way that it hasn't been. So I think we will see it more. I don't even know if it'll be a noticeable amount more. But I do think, especially in like short yardage, 4th and 1, it doesn't have to be a fullback dive now, or hey, line it up and run it. There's a ton of different things they can do to mess with defenses in that way.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And look, like losing Charlie Warner, like people laugh at the fact that he had 11 targets in 4 seasons, and in 2022 he was targeted twice and had 2 drops. Good for a 100% drop rate. According
Targeted
to Pro
twice
Football
with
Reference.
2 drops. What is this? My dating life in college?
Oh, nice.
Thanks, man.
But Charlie Warner was somebody who played like 10 to 20 snaps, like basically every week. So like replacing him, like it wasn't nothing, right? And he was a guy who played a ton of special teams. So it's not. I'm not going to sit here and say losing Charlie Warner is significant, but I'm not going to say it's completely insignificant either. So to replace him with somebody who might not be as good of a blocker as Charlie Warner was in the traditional sense, but to replace that guy with somebody who is actually a capable pass catcher could potentially be valuable for the Niners. So yeah, I get that.
So I think this dovetails nicely into your breakout candidate.
Yeah.
Who is Logan Thomas. Can I read you this stat real quick?
Sure.
To
Absolutely.
kick off this discussion.
That's what we're here to do.
Logan Thomas in 16 games last year. Year 8, by the way. He missed 2015 and 2016 because he was training to become a tight end when he came into the league as a quarterback, which is just bananas. The fact he's carved out a like legitimate NFL career as a tight end after entering the league as a quarterback is nuts. He's not rando guy who catches 1 pass a year. Like, no, he actually produces, and that's pretty crazy. Last season, year 8 for him as a pro. 55 catches, 496 yards, 4 touchdowns. Charlie Warner and Ross Dwelly combined in 149 career games. 55 catches, that's the same amount. 638 yards and 5 touchdowns. They combined for under 200 yards more and 1 more touchdown than Logan Thomas did last year. That's crazy. Like, that's just insane.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it also speaks to opportunity, right? Like Logan Thomas was the starting tight end, and George Kittle was here preventing or keeping all those guys off the field.
Yeah.
If you're the 49ers, you have Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle. You should not be throwing the ball to Charlie Warner. But yeah, your point stands. Like it's kind of wild how the 49ers haven't gotten any production really at all from any backup tight end, because typically you'd think like, oh, there's a gadget play here, or there's a game where that George Kittle misses and someone else can pick up the slack a little bit. Like, no, when George Kittle hasn't been available, the tight end production has just fallen off a cliff.
It's been really bad.
And that was notable, particularly in the Super Bowl when George Kittle had to exit early with that core muscle injury that he had.
Okay.
By the way, George Kittle coming off-season surgery is no small thing either. I think that's something to keep an eye on early in training camp and early in the season too.
Definitely. Ross Dwelly in 2020 started 9 games, played in 16, started 9. 24 targets, 19 catches, 245 yards, and a touchdown. Does Logan Thomas have better, worse, or similar numbers to that?
This season, you mean?
This season.
Yeah.
Better, worse, or the same?
Oh, better. I thought I said better.
Okay.
I thought you asked if he was going to be better, and I said, yeah. That was what I was.
Yeah, I said better,
head.
Worse, or the same, and you went, mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it will be too.
In terms of Logan Thomas being my breakout candidate, this is also me not really being all that optimistic about what Cam Latu and Braden Willis give you, right?
Sure.
So, and George Kittle by definition can't really break out, given he's been multiple time All-Pro and Pro Bowler.
Yeah. Borderline Hall of Famer.
But yeah, borderline Hall of Famer. So probably not somebody who's going to break out. But yeah, I do think Logan Thomas, if he stays healthy, can be a productive member of the offense, and like it could help in the red zone. Like the 49ers don't really have, particularly since they added Christian McCaffrey, like they've been an elite red zone team. But to have another viable option instead of Charlie Warner, I think could make the 49ers that much more difficult to defend, and also provide you more options on third and medium, which was a backbreaker in the Super Bowl. Yeah. So that's why he's a breakout candidate for me.
I agree with you, but for the sake of argument, I'm going to say Braden Willis.
Okay.
And I say this, I don't like, I wouldn't bet on this. All right. I want that to be clear, because I'm mostly with you. I think Latu in particular has I think pretty steep climb to a roster spot this year. I think he's going to have to make some pretty dramatic steps forward after not getting to play it all last year because he was on IR, and he did not have a good camp prior to going on IR. And I think part of the reason he went on IR was because he was not having a good camp. So he has a pretty steep climb to begin with. All due respect to Jake Tonjes and Mason Pline and Eric Saubert, I would bet on Willis ahead of them, and certainly ahead of Latu. If the line for breakout is obviously pretty low when you barely played as a rookie, but I think when you start looking at skill sets and the way he could be used, if he does take some kind of second year leap, I think there's a way that he could be really, really useful for the 49ers this year, even if it's just in spots where maybe it's a weird tight end around thing, or he throws a key block that springs a big run on the move, or something like that. I don't think it's going to happen, because I think there's going to be a pretty big logjam for snaps at the third tight end spot, and I don't know if anybody's supplanting Logan Thomas as the tight end too. But if you told me that one of the non-Kittle / Thomas tight ends had a good impactful year, I think I would have to bet on Braden Willis.
I think, yeah, I think that's totally fair.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, when it comes down to who wins the third tight end position, it's going to be who's the best guy on special teams.
Okay.
Right. Like that. Yes. That's what it is in my opinion, which we can talk about. The next bit of criteria.
Yes.
Is the position battle. It's obviously not to start, because that's George Kittle. We think, as we've established in 24 minutes talking about tight ends, that Logan Thomas is more likely than not to be the number 2. So the third tight end battle does seem up for grabs. And it seems like it's Braden Willis, Cam Latu, Eric Saubert, who's been on 9 teams, Mason Pline, and Jake Tonjes. I think, people you read about Latu leading up to his draft, and it wasn't so much about production that made him a 3rd-round pick, even though he was relatively productive at Alabama. It was more so projecting his athleticism. And I think one thing that should be noted about Latu, which is, I think, one of the things that makes him intriguing, but also one of the things that makes it like, maybe this guy doesn't make the roster. This guy didn't start playing tight end until 2020.
Yeah.
He was a linebacker and defensive end. He even went to Alabama to play defense initially before switching to tight end in college.
Right.
So the bet that the 49ers are making, and that, I don't think they were alone in this, because he was pretty much a consensus, 3rd, 4th round draft pick, was that he's got real development potential and maybe some untapped potential because he's so early in the process of transitioning positions. And one thing to keep in mind also, we talk about how the 3rd tight end is likely going to have to be a special teams guy in the same way that Charlie Warner was, is that his background as a defensive player should help him on special teams. Like, he should be able to tackle on kickoffs and punt coverage and do those things, right? He should be able to block, because he's a tight end too. So if he comes back healthy, more confident, develops, if he's been able to develop at all, then I do think there's talent there. But man, it's really hard to be optimistic based on what happened in training camp and in preseason last year with him. But on the other hand, like, who's he have to beat out? Like Braden Willis and Eric Saubert?
So that 3rd tight end spot, if you were ranking if you were to make a depth chart right now, it's Kittle 1, Thomas 2. How are you ranking these guys for the 3rd spot? Out of Braden Willis, Eric Saubert, Mason Pline, Cam Latu, and Jake Tonjes. Did you freeze? Or are you completely flummoxed by my question? I'll answer, since it looks like Chris is frozen, and I hope that this is still going. The way I'm ranking those players right now is I'm going Saubert as the number 1 option to be the 3rd tight end, if that makes sense. He's played in a lot of NFL games. He knows what to do. I think he's a capable blocker. He has not been a prolific pass catcher, but I think in that 3rd tight end spot specifically, they want somebody who can block somebody. And I think Saubert right now going into camp has kind of the leg up there. I'm going to go Willis 2. The fact that he got to play a little bit last year and was on the field in the Super Bowl, I think points his arrow up a little bit for me. So it's Saubert, then Willis. Then I'm going to go Jake Tonjes, because he was on the practice squad last year and has been around the team. And then I will go with Cameron Latu. Like I said, it's a steep climb for him, and maybe he figures something out in his 2nd year. Maybe Cam Latu gets on the field, like Chris was saying, and finds some of the untapped potential that the 49ers saw when they made him a 3rd-round pick. Because not only did he not start playing tight end until he got to college, but he did not become he played, but it was like as a blocker. I don't think he got a target until like his 2nd to last year at Alabama. So that's kind of where Cam Latu is, and he has to show it. Like there has to be, if he's going to make the 49ers roster, this year's camp has to provide flashes of that progress and that growth. He was in college for 5 years. This is the Niners aren't in a spot that they can let Cameron Latu be on the roster and just kind of figure it out as he goes along. Because at this point, if you're going in and having a bad camp at this point, you start to wonder if that development is ever really going to take place. So for now, he goes behind Saubert, behind Willis, behind Tonjes, but in front of Mason Pline. Mason Pline was a undrafted rookie this year out of Furman. I believe he went to Ferris State, the famed football factory Ferris State. I believe that's where he went before transferring to Furman. He was not prolific as a pass catcher at Ferris State. He had an okay season with the Paladins of Furman. Don't ask me how I know that, but it's not like this is some crazy diamond in the rough where we're going, oh man, maybe he's going to start. This is not the running back position. Like jumping from college to tight end is from college to the pros at tight end is very, very difficult. And you see some guys like Sam Laporta or George Kittle had some success right away. You see it happen for sure, but it's not easy making that jump when you're going from Ferris State to Furman. Shout out to FU. Shout out to Furman. But that's a substantial leap that I don't think Pline is going to be able to make. He has the size. I think he's like 6'6", like 235 or 240. Like he's a big boy. Like he has the size, but I think Pline is more of a practice squad player this year and not necessarily battling for a roster spot really. And frankly, I think he's pretty far behind Latu. So that's how I would have the third tight end battle shake out. It goes Saubert 1, Willis 2, Tonjes 3, Latu 4, Pline 5.
Yeah, apologies for we had I think an electrical hiccup as the temperature continues to rise in Sacramento. What's up?
Hell yeah, love summer. No, it was really funny because I said, can you rank these players if you were making a depth chart right now? Rank these guys. It's Kittle 1, Thomas 2, and then rank the guys we had written down. And then it was just silence. And I thought you were just flummoxed by the cue. I thought you were really digging deep to think about how you'd rank the third tight end candidates.
Trying to be really thoughtful about it. Yeah, for me, it would probably be Saubert, Willis, Latu, Pline, and Tonjes. I'm not going to pretend like I can.
Hang on. You're putting Mason Pline ahead of Jake Tonjes?
I am, yeah.
Wow. Okay, it's an argument for another podcast, I guess.
Soft hand. No, did you read any Mason Pline scouting reports?
No.
They're not.
Sorry.
I wouldn't say they're particularly kind.
Yeah.
That way. But it does. I mean, I get the intrigue. Like he can move and he's 6'7", but one of them was like, looks like he's wearing a weighted vest in and out of breaks. I was like, yikes. One was look, he's like a tiptoe, a guy who tiptoes over the middle and doesn't want smoke. It's like, man, these guys are not holding back.
Look, he went to Ferris State and then Furman and wasn't particularly productive at either spot. If he's going to be a pro, it's after a couple years of development on a practice squad. And even then, it's hard. He's not going to become the next Travis Kelce. So, wow, I don't have any more words to say about Mason Pline. What grade would you give this group?
Because it has George Kittle, like I'm going to give the tight end group a B-. Okay. And without George Kittle, it's a D or a D-.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like when George Kittle is playing football, he's one of the best tight ends in the league. And correct. When George Kittle is healthy, he's getting 90+% of the snaps. I think he played 90+% of the snaps in 12 games last year, including the playoffs, which is a whole hell of a lot. And there was a lot of games where he was in like the 80s in terms of percentage of snaps played too. Yeah, so bro. Kittle carries a group. Obviously, when he's out there, he's one of the best tight ends in the league, maybe the second best tight end in the league. So Maybe the first, depending on how much of a football guy you are who values run blocking. But yeah, it's a good group because of George Kittle. But when they don't have George Kittle, it is a flat out bad group.
I think I'm gonna go. I had C- written down initially, but in our YouTube chat, Kawachipto, buddy, if I'm pronouncing that wrong, please let me know. Mentioned Logan Thomas, and I think so. I had a C- written down. I think I'm gonna go B-, because if Logan Thomas is a starting NFL tight end, like he is one of the 32 best tight ends in the league. And I think when you have two players like that and you're insulating yourself, A, from a George Kittle injury, B, giving yourself some added flexibility to spell him a little bit, giving yourself added flexibility to run 22 personnel and pass and run out of those formations. The fact that there may not be another NFL player on the roster at the position is definitely concerning. And I'm with you. If you remove Kittle, you're looking at like a C-, D+ type of group. If you move Kittle and Thomas, you're looking at an F- type of group. But they have George Kittle, they have Logan Thomas, and then if we're gonna dock a team because their third tight end isn't good enough, like that's kind of tough. So what did I say? A B. I feel good about that. I feel good about a B.
How many like really good tight ends are in the league?
Really good?
Yeah, like really good players.
Kittle, Kelsey, Sam Laporta. I shouldn't have done this because I'm definitely going to forget some dudes.
I'm going to pull up the old PFF.
Kyle Pitts. I know he hasn't been super productive, but he's interesting.
By position.
There's going to be a gang of them because there's several really, really like high quality tight ends in the league. Dawson Knox. They have two out in Buffalo, Dawson Knox and
the other guy.
The other kid they just drafted. Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, TJ Hawkinson.
Yep, of course.
Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, Cole Kmet.
Mark Andrews, yep. Yeah, so there's a lot of...
You know who was a top 10 ranked or top 10 graded receiving tight end last year in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus?
Who?
Michael Pruitt.
Your Cole. Wow.
Yeah, not our Cole, not your Cole. Michael
49ers
Pruitt.
legend.
Yeah.
Good for him. Hey, can we wrap up this podcast so we didn't do 40 minutes on the 49ers tight ends?
No, I mean, we just got to hang on for 2 more minutes.
Dude, so we do this every time. This is how Kyle and Chris podcast prep goes. Hey, what time we want to go tonight? Time X work? Yep, sounds great. We doing what position tonight? Let's do tight ends. Great. All right. I don't have a ton on the tight end group. We'll keep it tight. It'll be nice. We're going into the holiday weekend, so we'll just keep, hot 15, 20, get in, get out. Smash cut to minute 40, and we're deep into the Mason Plan college game logs.
In fairness, the internet flickered over here for a second. I think.
I had to vamp for a couple of minutes there.
Yeah, the air conditioner I think took over. Air conditioner kicked off for a second, and then everything just kind of sputtered over here. So
that's what happened to me last night.
Mm-hmm.
It literally the power flickered, and it kicked me off my internet.
We're gonna set the thermostat to 76. Had been on 74. Usually
Holy
a 71,
shit, dude.
Usually a 71, 72 guy. What?
Bro, we set it at 80, and that shit runs.
Yeah. So believe me, this has been discussed in the household.
Crazy, dude.
We can talk about this offline, but I'm not trying to throw anyone else under the bus here.
Dude, throw the dog under the bus. Just do it.
No, but
shout out to Lily. Great dog.
Yeah. Lily's over here conked out.
Oh yeah. Big fan.
But all right, 15 seconds to get to 40. we'll think we can do it.
Rob Louder, shout out to Striking Gold, a Blue Wire 49ers podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your pods. Said I'm going to need a breakdown of the 49ers, of the history of 49ers tight ends before y'all bounce. Here's what I'll say about that. With a big salute to Russ Francis, Brent Jones, Eric Johnson, Garrett Selleck, et cetera, et cetera. Has George Kittle passed Vernon Davis yet?
I mean, for me, he has.
Like in the 49ers all-time tight end power rankings.
For me, he has.
Me too. Last year sealed it for me.
Yeah. I mean, Vernon was good and had the Saints catch, but Kittle's been better for longer now, it seems like. And Kittle's had multiple 1,000-yard seasons, and Vernon never had one.
Yeah, that's why, like I said, last year cemented it for me, because I thought a couple years ago it was over. But then I went back and I looked at Vernon's numbers and it's like, man, he was super freaking prolific there for a minute. But also then you go back and you watch Vernon Davis play football, and it's like, is anybody taking Vernon Davis over George Kittle? Not that Vernon was bad. Like, Vernon was awesome. But the way he went about attacking defenders after he had the ball in his hands was subpar.
Probably the polar opposites of
Dude, it was alarming when we did the old rush during the pandemic when there wasn't anything to do, so we just started watching old 49er games. Vernon Davis's ability to catch the ball, turn up field, and then immediately go down, very underrated. My man found a lot of sidelines.
You're right. Like, protecting the ball. Kind of.
I've got Kittle above Vernon.
Yeah. And keep in mind, too, Vernon had to go through the whole I want winners bench during a game thing.
And he was on some god-awful teams.
Yeah. And Kittle was like a dude from the jump.
Yes. Right.
It was like clear, like early on, it was like, oh, this guy's going to be their starting tight end as a rookie. And he's like made of the right stuff. Where Vernon was like, oh, this dude's super talented and ran an amazing 40, but like, are we sure he's going to be good at football? Yeah. And then he ended up becoming good at football, but George was good from the jump.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Salute to Vernon Davis. All right. We got to 40 minutes. We're done now. Stay tapped in. We'll be previewing each position on the 49ers roster as we take you up to training camp. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you have a friend looking for 49ers content, please put them on to us. We would appreciate that immensely. And, of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're working very hard on building that up. At Candlestick Chronicles Podcast, or youtube.com/@Candlestick Chronicles Podcast, or you can search Candlestick Chronicles on YouTube. You'll find us. Subscribe, hit the little notification bell so you're notified every time we go live. We'll start going live more often during the preseason, certainly during the regular season, and excited to get ready for this season of 49ers football with you. So thanks everybody for listening. Thanks everybody for watching. Chris, you got anything else?
No, that's it. Peace out.
See you.